Hey guys, it's Mrs. Bryant. Welcome to another flipped video classroom. Today we are going to work on writing linear equations from a model. So you need to go ahead and get out the whirling windmills and constructing cottages sheet I gave you in class on Friday. And make sure you're ready to copy some notes down and learn how to write linear equations. So, look at whirling windmills. The number of blocks in each blade is 1. Here's your visual form, your written description. So, a windmill with 1 block in each blade takes how many blocks to build? And the answer is 5. So, total number of blocks is 5. Go down. We'll come to the process column in just a minute. Number of blocks in each blade is 2. A windmill with 2 blocks in each blade takes how many blocks to build? 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. So your total number of blocks is 9. A windmill with 3 blocks in each blade takes how many? 3, 6, 9, 12, 13. And then a windmill with 4 blocks in each blade takes how many? 4. It would be 4, 8, 12, 16, 17. So if you remember from the cycling examples, in order to find out what your process is, you first start by finding rate of change, or change in y divided by change in x. So our rate of change is 4, or our change in y, is 4 all the way down. And our change in y, or x, is 1. So our rate of change is change in y divided by change in x equals 4. This number right here becomes your coefficient in your equation. We know that we did 4 times 1, but we know we need to get to 5. So 4 times 1 is 4. So we need to add something to get to 5, and to add we would just add 1, and this is your process. So let's see if it works all the way down. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 1 equals 9. 4 times 3 is 12 plus 1 equals 13. 4 times 4 plus 1 equals 17. So before we move on to the next example, we can go ahead and look at doing this. 4 times 63 is what? 240 and 12 is 252, plus 1 would be 253. We can do it here. 4 times 100 is 400, plus 1 would be 401. Once you have your linear equation, you can stick in any number for x and get your equation. So to get your linear equation, you write 4x plus 1. So our equation would be 4x plus 1. And that is how you can come up with a linear equation that is an additive with a different coefficient. You first have to find the rate of change, and then after you find the rate of change, that becomes your coefficient, and then you got to figure out what you need to add or subtract to get to your total blocks. This is just a slide of everything that we've done. But let's see what the questions ask at the bottom. You just need to know the rate of change in y over change in x, is the coefficient of x in the equation. And I just said that in the previous slide. So let us go. Oh, here's another thing, sorry. The value added, which can be positive or negative, is the constant in the equation. So you needed to know the word coefficient, which is your rate of change, and you need to know that whatever you're adding or subtracting at the end of a linear equation is called your constant. And those are words that we've used in class before, so they should not be anything new. So look at your whirling windmills. Your table should be filled out by now. Let's go ahead and answer those questions. It says, in the visual form, the independent variable is represented by, and it should be the blades of windmill because that is what's changing every single time. And the dependent variable is represented by total number of blocks. So the first blank is blades of windmill. And then the second blank for dependent variable is going to be the total number of blocks. So the total number of blocks needed to build a windmill depends on what? Well, you're looking at those keywords. You know the total number of blocks is the dependent, so it says depends on. And so your answer is the number of blocks in the blade. Number of blocks in the blade. And it says the rate of change for this table of values in lowest terms is, that's when you're going to go back to your equation, and your rate of change is this 4, and that is where we found this right here. Your rate of change is 4. It says write the equation that represents the relationship between the number of blocks in each blade of a windmill and the total number of blocks. If you remember, we wrote that equation at the bottom of our first slide, and then it was written again on the next slide. It is y equals 4x plus 1. Y equals 4x plus 1. Next question says, what part of the visual form is represented by the coefficient of x in the equation? And that right there, all you have to write is the blades. The blade is what is the representation of the coefficient. So what part of the visual form? It is the blades. Then it wants to know what part of the visual form is represented by the constant. And that is more or less this middle piece right here. There is your constant, whatever that middle piece was, because it's never changing. Your constant stays constant. All right. If you have any questions, make sure you write those on your whirling windmills so I can answer them tomorrow or on Monday in class. Turn to the back page of whirling windmills. You will see the constructing cottages, and we're going to do exactly the same thing with whirling windmills. So let's go ahead and answer these questions. A cottage with a how many block chimney? There's only one right there. Takes how many blocks to build? And the answer is 7. So our total number of blocks is 7. A cottage with how many blocks for the chimney? 2. Takes how many to build? Well, 2, 4, 6, 8. A cottage with 3 block chimney takes 9. A cottage with 4 block chimney, and these numbers right here are coming from this column right here. Takes how many? Well, 2, 4, 6, and then it's going to be 10. So if you remember from our last example, in order to find our coefficient for our linear equation, we do change in y divided by change in x. So our change in y is going to be 1. And then our change in x is also going to be 1. So change in y over change in x is 1 over 1, or 1. So we know that this number becomes the number in front of x. So far we have y equals 1x. So 1 times 1. Well, 1 times 1 is 1, but I need to get to 7. So what do I need to add? Plus 6. Let's see if it works all the way down. You ready? 1 times 2 plus 6 works. 1 times 3 plus 6 works. 1 times 4 plus 6 works. So we can do it all the way down. 1 times 58 plus 6 equals 64. 1 times 100 plus 6 equals 106. And we can prove that. We can prove our rate of change stays the same because 36 plus 6 is 42. And 58 to 100 is 42. So 42 divided by 42 equals 1. So that is the same number as our rate of change up here. So our equation would be x plus 6. So let's look at it. This looks like just what we did. So let's answer some questions. Our rate of change was 1. We've already talked about that. So our equation is 1x plus 6, and our constant is 6. Constant is whatever you're adding or subtracting from your variable or your coefficient. So let's go ahead and answer the questions at the bottom of constructing cottages. It says in the visual form, the independent variable is represented by, well, that would be the chimney. So you need to write chimney in that first blank. Excuse me. And then it says, and the dependent variable is represented by, well, total number of blocks. Here is your independent, here is your dependent. All right. It says the total number of blocks needed to build a cottage depends on what? Well, this depends on this. So that blank is going to be number of blocks in the chimney. It says the rate of change for this table of values in lowest terms is, well, here's your answer right here, 1. Write the equation that represents this relationship between the number of blocks in each chimney of a cottage and the total number of blocks. We know X represents number of blocks in the chimney, and we know Y represents total, so here's your equation. Y equals 1x plus 6, or Y equals x plus 6. These two equations are the exact same thing. What part of the visual form is represented by the coefficient of x in the equation? That means what is representative of your rate of change? Well, that would be the number of blocks in the chimney. So the visual represented by the coefficient is number of blocks in a chimney. What part of the visual form is represented by the constant in the equation? Well, the constant would be 6, so it is going to be the base of your house. Base of the house. That is it for the notes for today's flipped classroom. Make sure that you bring this into class on Monday so we can use it. We will be doing 2 more examples of writing linear equations on Monday. Make sure you bring this notes back and be ready to work on Monday. Have a great weekend, everyone.